You know the ending. The camera moves slowly down a quiet suburban street, cookie-cutter houses, manicured lawns. A morning that could be anywhere in America. Ray Liotta steps out of the front door in a bathrobe to pick up the newspaper. The voiceover comes in. He tells you he is an average nobody now, that he gets to live the rest of his life like a schnook. The door closes. Cream Sunshine of Your Love kicks in. Cut to black. It is one of the most celebrated endings in American cinema. Scorsese gives it weight and melancholy and the specific sadness of a man who has been stripped of everything that made him feel alive. Henry Hill, former Lucchesi associate, Lufthansa heist participant, the $5.875 million JFK cargo robbery of the 11th of December 1978. The largest cash theft ever committed on American soil at the time, mob rat, federal witness, reduced to a bathrobe and a newspaper in the suburbs. Finished. Done. The life behind him for good. Now, here is what actually happened. 1981. Omaha, Nebraska. Henry Hill is living under the name Martin Lewis. The U.S. Marshal Service has given him a house to rent. $1,500 a month in stipend money. And one rule that supersedes all others: do not tell anyone who you are. Do not call your old contacts. Do not use drugs. Do not do anything that would require the government to move you again, or worse, to explain to the New York mob exactly where you are. There is a $500,000 bounty on Hill's head placed by Jimmy Burke. Every man Hill testified against either wants him dead personally or knows someone who does. Henry Hill is in Omaha for approximately 6 months before he starts calling his drug-dealing friends in New York. His son, Greg, 13 years old, pulled overnight from his life on Long Island, told he would never go back. Stuffed into a car with as much as he could fit into a plastic garbage bag, watches his father pick up the phone and call the people who want to kill him from the house the government is paying for, while his family sleeps in the next room. Greg Hill will later describe those years in a book he writes with his sister Gina on the Run, A Mafia Childhood, published in 2004. He will say their lives were not just falling apart. They had been vaporized, liquidated, erased, and their father only made everything worse. The film ends with Henry Hill becoming an average nobody. The reality is that Henry Hill could not be an average nobody for a single week. He was constitutionally, psychologically, and practically incapable of the ordinary life the film's ending implies he has accepted. The schnook in the bathrobe is a character Martin Scorsese created. The real Henry Hill went directly back to being Henry Hill the moment the federal marshals looked away, which they did constantly because they could not watch him every hour of every day. And every time they looked away, Hill made exactly the choices that guaranteed the next relocation, the next arrest, the next crisis, the next chapter of a life that the movie presents as finished in 1980. It was not finished. It was 32 more years of the same man, doing the same things in different zip codes, and it is one of the most extraordinary and most documented stories that Goodfellas never had time to tell you. June 11th, 1943, Brooklyn, New York. Henry Hill Jr. is born to Henry Hill Sr., an Irish-American electrician from the Brownsville section of Brooklyn, and Carmela Costa, a Sicilian-American woman from the same neighborhood. He grows up at the corner of Pine Street and Pitkin Avenue in an area that is, as he will later describe it in his own words, totally dominated by the Lucchesi crime family. He is not born into the mob. He has to earn his way in. He begins earning it at age 12, when he crosses the street to run errands for the men at the cab stand. Men in silk suits with diamond rings and beautiful women on their arms. Men who tip with $50 bills and who are treated by every person in the neighborhood with a specific combination of fear and deference that old Henry Hill understands immediately as the most powerful thing he has ever seen. He is the son of an Irish father and a Sicilian mother. In the specific rules of La Cosa Nostra, this means he can never be formally inducted, cannot be made, cannot take the oath, cannot sit at the table as a full member regardless of what he earns or what he produces. He will always be an associate. He will always work for the men who are technically his superiors. And he will always be in the specific vocabulary that will define his life on the outside looking in, no matter how deep inside he actually gets. This exclusion is the specific fuel of everything because Henry Hill works harder than the made men around him, earns more aggressively, takes more risks, and makes himself more useful than any formally inducted member precisely because he can never stop proving himself. Paul Vario, the Lucchese capo, who becomes his mentor and surrogate father, and Jimmy Burke, the Irish hijacking genius who becomes his closest friend and most dangerous associate, both recognize this quality in him immediately. Hill will do anything. He will do it well, and he will do it without the protection of the formal structure that shields the made men. He is arrested for the first time at 16. He gives his name and nothing else to the detectives who question him. He does not give up Vario's son, who was with him. He does not give up anyone. Vario's attorney gets him out on bail. The refusal to talk earns him a level of respect that launches his career more effectively than any criminal act he could have committed. For the next 20 years, he does everything. Hijacking trucks from JFK Airport, running numbers, bookmaking, loan sharking, extortion, theft, fraud, and eventually narcotics, which Vario explicitly forbids because the sentences are too long and the heat is too direct. Hill knows this. He does it anyway because the money is extraordinary, and because Henry Hill, at his core, is a man who cannot stop. He cannot stop talking. He cannot stop spending. He cannot stop using. He cannot stop moving. It is the engine that makes him valuable inside the mob world. That relentless, frenetic, always moving quality. And it is the same engine that makes every other part of his life impossible to sustain. The government said, "A couple of $100 million went through my hands," he tells a reporter years later. He made between $15,000 and $40,000 a week for years. He blew it, he says, without apparent remorse on slow horses, women, drugs, and rock and roll. April 27th, 1980, Nassau County, Long Island. FBI and DEA agents arrest Henry Hill on narcotics trafficking charges connected to a Pittsburgh drug operation. He has been running using prison contacts from his 1,972 extortion conviction. He is driving a car when they take him. He has, at the time of his arrest, a cocaine habit that is consuming extraordinary quantities daily, and a paranoia level that his family later describes as having made him genuinely frightening to be around in the months before the arrest. He is, at the moment the cuffs go on, fully aware of something the arresting agents do not yet fully understand. That his boss, Paul Vario, already knows about the drug operation and has already distanced himself from Hill because of it. And that Jimmy Burke, who helped execute 9 murders in the months after the Lufthansa heist, the $5.875 million JFK cargo robbery that the FBI identified his crew as the perpetrators of within 72 hours, has begun making the specific calculations about Hill that he made about every man who became a liability in 1978 and 79. The FBI shows Hill a surveillance tape. On it, Burke tells Vario that Hill should be whacked. Hill is given a choice that is not really a choice. He can stay silent, face the narcotics charge, and wait for Burke's people to reach him in prison or in the street afterward, or he can talk. He talks. He signs the agreement with the Brooklyn Organized Crime Strike Force on May 27th, 1980. His testimony will eventually produce 50 convictions, including Vario himself, Burke for the basketball fixing and the Eaton murder, and a cascade of associated charges across the Lucchese family's New York operations. Burke, who was never tried for the heist he masterminded, died in prison in April 1996 of cancer, having served time only for the lesser charges Hill's testimony produced. Edward McDonald, the head of the strike force, who appears as himself in the Goodfellas reenactment of this conversation, tells Hill what the deal means. Hill, his wife Karen, their 1-3-year old son Greg, and 1-year-old daughter Gina enter the United States Marshals Witness Protection Program. They are taken overnight from their house on Long Island. The children pack plastic garbage bags in the middle of the night. They do not say goodbye to anyone. They do not know where they are going. They are told one thing: do not tell anyone you are from New York. The family is relocated to Omaha, Nebraska, the land of rolling cornfields and fresh air, as the CBS News documentary on the Hill family later puts it, with a specific deadpan that captures exactly how wrong the fit is. Within weeks, Henry Hill is calling his drug contacts in New York. The federal marshals monitoring the family pick up the calls. They move the family Omaha to Independence, Kentucky. In Kentucky, Hill does something that almost ends the entire arrangement. He co-writes an article for Sports Illustrated about the Boston College point shaving scheme he ran with Burke and the Pittsburgh Steelers connections in 1978 and 79. The article is a substantial piece of investigative journalism that Hill provides the core material for, in direct violation of the agreement that he will not expose himself publicly while under protection. The FBI, according to Greg Hill's later account, goes nuts. They threaten to throw him out of the program. They cannot yet because they still need his testimony in active cases. The article compromises the family's safety. The marshals move them again. Independence, Kentucky to Redmond, Washington, just east of Seattle. In Redmond, Hill is arrested multiple times for drunk driving. He fights constantly with his son, Greg, who is now a teenager trying to live a normal life in a succession of states he has never been to. In schools where he knows no one under a name that is not his. Greg later says there was a specific day when he understood that if he stayed one more day, something terrible would have happened. He was 19. He packed a bag and left. One of the most painful things I ever did was leave my mother and my sister, he says in a CBS News interview years later, with his face obscured because he is still using his protected identity. But I knew if I stayed there, something terrible would have happened. Redmond to Sarasota, Florida. One final chance. In Sarasota, Hill does the specific thing he has already done in Redmond at a neighborhood gathering under the influence of liquor and drugs simultaneously. He tells his neighbors exactly who he is. Not hints, not suggestions. He tells them he is Henry Hill. He was in the mob. His life was made into a movie. The federal marshals who have moved this family more than 10 times at this point across Omaha, Cincinnati, Montana, Independence, Kentucky, Redmond, Washington, Seattle, Sarasota, Florida, and other locations are done. They expel Henry Hill from the Federal Witness Protection Program in 1987. The same year, he is arrested in Seattle on a narcotics conspiracy charge for cocaine trafficking and receives 5 years probation. He is out. No more protection. No more $1,500 a month. No more marshals watching his back. A $500,000 bounty is still on his head. He is using his real name because he has nothing to hide it behind anymore, and he is, by every documented account, essentially fine with all of it. The Goodfellas ending tells you he got 5 years probation for the Seattle drug charge and had been clean since. The title card appears on screen, and the film is over. The audience walks out understanding that Henry Hill has paid some price. Not the price anyone in the mob would have paid. Not prison, not death, but some price. The schnook life, the ordinary anonymous existence. The reality is that the title card is the last honest thing the film can tell you about Henry Hill. Because everything that happens after 1987 is too messy and too contradictory and too human for the clean Scorsese ending to contain. 1,990. Goodfellas premieres. Made on a budget of $25 million, it grosses $46.8 million worldwide, earns 6 Academy Award nominations including Best Picture and Best Director, and wins Joe Pesci the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Roger Ebert calls it, in an unqualified 4-star review, no finer film has ever been made about organized crime. It becomes one of the most celebrated films in American cinema history. Henry Hill, the man who said nobody goes to the law, Nobody Goes to the Law, is now the most famous mob rat in American history. His face on every screen in the country, his voice in every theater. He makes $550,000 from the film. He later tells a British reporter he was still owed millions more. It is, by any measure, a lot of money. He spends it. 2001. He is arrested again in Seattle on narcotics-related charges. 2004. He leaves his luggage at Leebird Field Airport in North Platte, Nebraska. Inside the luggage, drug paraphernalia, glass tubes with cocaine residue, glass tubes with methamphetamine residue. He has been working as a chef at an Italian restaurant in North Platte. A man who could not stop talking about food in Goodfellas, who described his last meal before the arrest rolled veal cutlets, sauce with pork butt, veal shanks, ziti, and green beans with olive oil and garlic, with more specificity and more love than almost anything else in the film, is making pasta in Nebraska and leaving drug paraphernalia in airport luggage. In September 2005, he is sentenced to 180 days in prison for the attempted methamphetamine possession. 2007, he opens a restaurant in West Haven, Connecticut. He names it Wise Guys. It burns down 1 month after opening. 2009. He is given 2 years probation after pleading guilty to 2 counts of public intoxication. Months later, in December 2009, he is arrested in Fairview Heights, Illinois for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. He tells the officers it is his drinking. He tells the press the same thing. All of this is documented. All of it is public record. And all of it sits alongside the specific celebrity life that Hill has been living simultaneously. The Howard Stern Show appearances, arriving with a beer already in his hand and asking for another. Telling Stern, when asked about his sobriety, "I slipped. I'm an alcoholic, Howard." The Entertainment Weekly photo shoot with Ray Liotta, who takes one look at Hill and tells him he needs to go to rehab. Hill goes 2 days later. He does not stay. He appears on 60 Minutes. He appears on AMC's Mob Week. He appears in documentaries about the Irish mob, about Goodfellas, about the Boston College point-shaving scandal that ESPN turns into a 30 for 30 special in 2014. He sells his spaghetti sauce on the internet under the name Sunday Gravy. He sells his paintings on eBay, paintings that typically depict men being shot and falling off buildings. He is inducted into the Museum of the American Gangster in New York City in 2010. He is in the last decade of his life more famous than he has ever been. He is also documented arrest by documented arrest. Still exactly the man he was in 1963 when he first started running errands for the man at the cab stand. He cannot stop. He does not know how to stop. He never learned how. The federal program tried to teach him, and he told his neighbors in Sarasota exactly who he was. The film tries to give him an ending, and he spends 30 years proving it wrong. Robert Dyro called him 5 or 6 times a day during the filming of Goodfellas. How would Jimmy hold a cigarette? How would Jimmy hold a shot glass? Hill coaches him through every gesture, every mannerism, every detail of the man who put a bounty on Hill's head. He calls the film 95% accurate. He watches it repeatedly. He loves it. He loves Ray Liotta. He loves that the world gets to see what his life was. He dies on June 12, 2012, complications from heart disease. He is 69 years old. He dies in a Los Angeles hospital 1 day after his 69th birthday. His girlfriend of 6 years, Lisa Caserta, is at his side. She tells CBS News, "He went out pretty peacefully for a good fellow."